If 5 strangers were standing on your porch in the middle of a storm, carrying nothing but old suitcases and wounded eyes, and one of them looked at you and said, "You can handle all 5 of us," what would you do? Before we begin, if stories about second chances, unexpected family, and finding light after loss mean something to you, like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know, and there's someone out there tonight who might need this story as much as you do. When Daniel Mercer drove up the mountain road for the first time in 12 years, he almost turned around. The rain was coming down so hard the windshield wipers could barely keep up. The gravel road twisted through pine trees and fog until the world felt smaller and smaller, like the mountain itself was swallowing everything behind him. He hadn't planned to come. He hadn't wanted the cabin. He hadn't wanted the letter from the lawyer, or the funeral, or the memories that had followed him like shadows. His grandfather had died 3 weeks earlier. That was the official reason. The truth was that Daniel had been running out of places to hide. At 34, he was a man whose life had quietly fallen apart. 2 years earlier he had owned a small architecture firm in Seattle. He had been engaged to a woman named Claire. He had been the kind of person who made lists, paid bills early, and believed the future could be controlled if you worked hard enough. Then the firm collapsed after a partner disappeared with nearly all their capital. The lawsuits followed. Claire left when she realized Daniel had become a stranger who barely slept, barely spoke, and spent every day staring at spreadsheets like they were life support. Then his mother got sick. He spent the next year watching hospitals turn hope into numbers. When she died, something inside him went silent. Now he had a cabin in the mountains of northern Washington. A place he hadn't seen since he was 17. His grandfather Elias had built it with his own hands. Daniel still remembered summers there, chopping wood badly while Elias laughed, fishing at dawn, hearing stories by the fire. But after his father died in a car accident, Daniel had stopped visiting. The cabin became part of a past he couldn't bear to touch. Until now, he parked beside the porch and sat there for a long moment. The place looked smaller than he remembered. The roof sagged a little. The paint had faded. One of the porch rails leaned crookedly. But the windows still glowed with amber light. He frowned. That made no sense. The lawyer had said the place had been empty. He got out of the truck. The rain hit him instantly, cold and sharp. He climbed the porch steps and stopped when voices drifted through the door. Women's voices. Laughter. Low, cautious. Then silence. He knocked once. The door opened halfway. A woman with dark curls and steady gray eyes stared at him. She looked maybe 28. She wore a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up. There was mud on her boots and caution in every line of her face. "Yes." Daniel blinked. I think there's been a mistake. This is my cabin." Her eyes didn't move. "No," she said quietly. It was Elias Mercer's cabin. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. He was my grandfather. That changed everything. The woman looked over her shoulder. 4 more women appeared behind her. A tall woman with a scar near her eyebrow. A younger one clutching a book against her chest. A woman with silver blonde hair and tired eyes. Another with braided hair, arms folded, watching him carefully. 5 strangers. The woman at the door opened it a little wider, then said words he would remember for the rest of his life. "You can handle all 5 of us." For a moment Daniel thought. She was joking. She wasn't. He stepped inside because the rain was freezing and because there was nowhere else to go. The cabin smelled like cedar, soup, and old smoke. The woman introduced herself first. Mara. Then the others. June, Elena, Tessa, Ruth. No last names at first. They sat around the table while rain hammered the roof. Mara explained. Elias had let them stay there. All of them had come at different times over the last 2 years. He had found them when life had broken open beneath their feet. Mara had fled an abusive marriage. June had aged out of foster care and been sleeping in her car. Elena had lost her husband and then her apartment. Tessa had escaped a trafficking situation in Portland. Ruth had been a nurse until burnout and grief collapsed her life into panic attacks and silence. Elias had taken them in. Not as charity, as people, he said. Elena told him softly, a person doesn't need saving as much as they need somewhere safe enough to breathe again. Daniel didn't know what to say. His grandfather had never mentioned any of this. He knew you'd come eventually, Mara said. Daniel laughed bitterly. No, he probably knew I'd avoid this place until I ran out of excuses. Mara held his gaze. He said you were hurting. That landed harder than Daniel expected. For the first few days, he planned to sell the cabin. That was the practical solution. He had debts, legal bills, a future to rebuild. The women kept their distance. He fixed a broken hinge, checked the roof, went into town for groceries. At night he sat alone on the porch staring into darkness. But slowly, the cabin worked on him. He noticed little things. June reading late into the night because community college started in 2 months and she was terrified she wouldn't be smart enough. Ruth waking from nightmares. Tessa jumping at sudden sounds. Elena singing quietly while cooking. Mara repairing a loose floorboard because she couldn't stand feeling useless. They were all surviving. Barely. And for the first time in years, Daniel stopped thinking only about himself. One morning he found an envelope tucked under his door. His grandfather's handwriting. Daniel, if you're reading this, I'm gone, which means you're probably angry with me for not telling you things. That's fair. I didn't tell you because pain makes people hide, and I knew you'd understand only when your own hiding got heavy enough. These women don't belong to me. This cabin doesn't either. But kindness is a form of inheritance. I hope you learn that before you decide what to keep. Love, Granddad. Daniel sat there for a long time with the letter in his hands. For years he had believed inheritance meant money, land, objects. Now he wasn't so sure. Winter came early that year. Snow trapped them on the mountain for 3 straight days. The generator failed the first night. The temperature dropped hard, and suddenly survival became practical. Daniel spent 6 hours outside repairing frozen fuel lines while Tessa held a flashlight through blowing snow. Mara hauled firewood. Elena rationed food. June melted snow for water. Ruth wrapped blankets around everyone and kept panic from spreading. When the generator finally kicked back on, all 6 of them were exhausted and half frozen. They ended up sitting together in front of the fire. No walls, no pretending. That night June admitted she was terrified everyone in her life eventually left. Ruth said grief had made her feel like a ghost. Tessa said she didn't know how to trust kindness because kindness had often come with a price. Then Mara spoke. My husband used to say nobody else would ever want me. That I was too much work. Silence. Then Daniel heard himself speaking before he had planned to. When my mother died, I stopped answering calls. Friends stopped trying after a while. I told myself I preferred being alone. Truth is, I didn't know how to be around people who were still alive. No one said anything for a moment. Then Elena reached over and put her hand on his shoulder. That simple, that human, and something in Daniel broke open. Not loudly, quietly, like ice thawing. Spring brought trouble. The bank called. The property taxes hadn't been paid in nearly a year. There was also an old lien attached to Daniel's grandfather's estate from medical debt. The amount wasn't impossible, but for Daniel, it might as well have been. He told no one at first. He went into town and sat in his truck outside the bank staring at numbers again. It felt familiar. The old helplessness. The old drowning. He came back late. Mara was waiting on the porch. You've got that face again. What face? The one that says you think carrying everything alone makes you noble. He laughed despite himself. Then he told her. She listened. So what now? She asked. I sell. No, it isn't that simple. No, Mara said again. It isn't. The next morning the women were waiting at the table. Ruth had somehow found part-time nursing work at the clinic in town. Elena had been selling pies at the farmer's market and had a waiting list. June offered tutoring. Tessa repaired furniture and wanted to sell pieces. Mara had experience managing rentals and small events. We keep it, she said. Together. Daniel stared at them. You barely know me. Tessa smiled faintly. None of us knew Elias either. Not at first. That summer they worked harder than any of them had in years. They repaired the porch, rebuilt 2 guest rooms, painted walls, cleared trails. Elena turned the old shed into a kitchen space for baking. Tessa built furniture from reclaimed wood. June made a website. Ruth planted herbs. Daniel drew plans and, for the first time since losing his firm, felt useful. They turned the cabin into a retreat. A place for people recovering from grief, burnout, loss, escape, or simply exhaustion. No luxury, no polished brand, just warmth, quiet, honest food, forest air, a porch light left on. At first only a few people came. A widower from Spokane, a teacher from Portland, a woman who had just left rehab. Then word spread. People came because the place felt different. Because no one there pretended healing was simple. Because everyone there understood what it meant to arrive carrying too much. One evening in late September, Daniel stood alone on the porch. The sun was setting gold across the trees. He could hear laughter inside. Real laughter. The kind that fills empty spaces. Mara stepped out beside him. "You're thinking too hard again." "Probably." She leaned on the railing. "You sold it yet?" He smiled. "No." "Good." He looked at her. "You know, the first night you scared the life out of me. You showed up in a storm and claimed the house. It was technically my house." "Was," she said. He knew what she meant. After a moment he said quietly, "I think my grandfather knew." "Knew what?" "That I wouldn't save this place." She looked at him. "No, but maybe he knew this place would save you." A year later, the cabin had a new roof. The garden was thriving. June got accepted into university. Ruth laughed more than she cried. Tessa slept through most nights. Alina's bakery orders filled 2 notebooks. Mara finally stopped checking the locks 3 times before bed. And Daniel started drawing again. Not buildings for clients. Homes. Places people could belong. One October afternoon a young man arrived at the porch in the rain. He looked 22, maybe younger. Thin, exhausted, lost. He carried a duffel bag and nothing else. He hesitated before knocking. Daniel opened the door. The young man swallowed hard. "I heard. Maybe this place helps people." Daniel looked at him for a long second. Then he smiled. Behind him, 5 familiar voices drifted from the kitchen. He stepped aside. "Come in," he said. And for the first time in many years, he understood exactly what inheritance meant. Not what you keep, what you pass forward. Sometimes people think strength means carrying everything alone. It doesn't. Sometimes strength is knocking on a door when you have nowhere else to go. Sometimes strength is opening it. And sometimes the family that saves your life is the one you never expected to find. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you of someone you love, or of the part of yourself that's still healing, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need a light in the dark. Because somewhere tonight, someone is standing in the rain, wondering if any door will open. Maybe yours will.